welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, May the 9th, 2018, show number 1174. I am Shawn King, joined as always by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
There was something I was going to say. We have company? Do you have to go visit company?
Oh, no, I think the lady's here to get her mail.
Small town, we pick up each other's mail. On tonight's show, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about the 20th anniversary of the Macintosh announcement, the original iMac announcement in 1998, May 6th, 1998. That was a really interesting time for Apple. I'd been doing Your Mac Life for that time 4 years, and it was just a matter of time before Apple got bought by somebody. It was just everyone just thought we're just waiting for them to get bought by IBM or Sun or whatever it was, and the iMac saved Apple. So we're going to talk to Jim Dalrymple about his memories of that time in Apple's history and the actual announcement and his first view of the iMac. What was your first view of the iMac? Did you own one? Did you own one of the original Bondi?
Bondi.
We all call it Bondi, but the Australians said Bondi. Did you own one of the original Bondi iMacs? I never had one of the original iMacs. My first iMac was I always had laptops, so I loved the little iMac though. We'll talk more about that later on in the show. We'll also talk about this Google Assistant. I don't know if you saw this demo yesterday at the Google I/O conference. We'll talk about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And in our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about the essential steps to taking a good photo. There's some things that if you do, some mental steps that if you take, your photos will automatically get better. So we'll talk about that later on in the show. It's been coming for a while. It's been one of those things that you knew had to happen sooner or later, that you kind of have to admit the truth as much as you don't want to. But sadly, it happens to all of us, most of us. And this, was it yesterday or no, it was Monday? Monday.
Monday. They look so good, though.
Monday, Melissa and I both went in and got glasses. A little quick look at mine. And to be clear, I didn't pick these out. She picked these out for me. So if they look good, it's her fault. If they don't look good, it's her fault.
They're very cool. I like them a lot.
Do you? Mm-hmm. See, I don't care one way or the other because I can't see them. Right. All I care about is do they help with the issues that I had. And my issues were the typical issues of anyone getting older. Just smaller text and darker lighting was starting to bother me. And I'm starting to get more headaches than I usually get. And you think that was one of the issues as to why, maybe.
Well, you're on the computer all day,
So
Sherry says then, they look good.
Well, thank you, Sherry. And then you got your pair.
I got I've needed them for a long time for distance.
But your pair are...
Your IQ just went up 15 points.
just by getting glasses? Oh, okay. Oh. So now my IQ's at 115. They're going to take a while to get used to. Because they're different. Because they also, I don't know if they're exactly right.
No, we'll have to. We'll go back
But they can't adjust them once they.
Well, but if you're having issues, they got to do it again.
Because I can see perfectly fine, but when I'm looking at a computer screen, quite often I'll move my eyes down one way. But if my head's this way, the stuff down there is still blurry. But it did make a huge. I mean, the lens fitter, who's that person that helped us? Whoever that person is that helps you, gave me a sheet of paper with different point sizes of text on it, and without these on, I couldn't read the text that it was 10 point or less. With these on, I could read the 6 point font size easily, which I could never do before.
Okay.
And I've noticed actually on my screen, I've lowered the font size of the text that I have to look at. Before I had to have it at like 18 or 16 point size, and now I'm down to 10 and 12. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is going to be two things. Will the headaches stop? They weren't frequent headaches. It was every 3 or 4 days, just back of the head headaches.
Mm-hmm.
And how soon before I lose them?
I was just going to say, how soon are you going to lose them? So the hint is to always put them down in the same spot. Who said that? Someone said to always put them down in the same spot.
But I wear them in 2 places. 3 places, actually. I wear them in the kitchen for reading recipes, in front of the computer for reading the screen, and then in bed for reading.
Well, they'll be in the house somewhere.
The other problem is, not problem, but these are not glasses for looking at a distance. So I'm looking out the window, things are a little fuzzy. So I have to take them off to look at the window.
To look at the distance.
So the thing is, now I get to do this very intelligent thing.
And check it out. You can always put them on your head. Like, you look pretty cool when you put them on your head like that. That looks pretty.
So. Oh.
Mac Man. I give him until the next show. Yeah, I give him till like an hour from now. Where are my glasses?
Well, the good news is I'm generally not going to need them when I leave the house.
No, you won't.
Because if I'm leaving the house, I'm probably going to be with Melissa, and she can read the menu for me.
It's like you've been reading subtitles for me. What did I say?
That's right.
What? What's that?
It's obviously we're the perfect couple. Because she can't read things far away. I can't read things up close. So I read subtitles for her on movies, and she reads menus for me. Exactly. It's a match made in heaven. You can't ask for anything better than that. Now you got
your glasses. You don't need me anymore.
No. I still need.
He's got to think about that. See.
What was your back home in Australia? Were you a Macintosh user? What kind of computer do you use?
Oh my God, I don't even think I used a computer before I left Australia.
Remember what your first personal computer was?
It was not a Mac.
Wasn't a Mac?
No.
Okay, what was your first Mac then?
I think it might have been, because I didn't do it for all those years at the Center for Ability. I think it might have been here. I had to do the transfer over. Yeah.
So it was a laptop.
Yes.
I've switched back and forth between when I was working as a graphic designer. We had the big tower, the big ugly tower with the big monitor. But then when I started doing consulting, I needed somebody that could travel with me, so it was a laptop. And it wasn't until, and then doing the show, we needed towers to do the show. It wasn't until, if I remember correctly, I think the iMac I had before this one was my first iMac computer. Because at the time, they were always fairly underpowered for the stuff I needed to do on them. Audio editing, video editing, Photoshop, graphic design type work. So even though I recognized how important the iMac was, I never actually used one of the original Bondi Blue ones or the ones that came along, the gumdrop shaped ones. But I always recognized how important they were to not only Apple, but people in general. The iMac was the first visually friendly computer in that when you walked into a store, when you walked into any location that had one, it was a happy computer. You know, it was this pretty color. It was this interesting idea that you could see into it. It was this interesting shape that you'd never seen from a computer before. And so a lot of people, I think the iMac took away for some people some of the initial fear of computers. Plus the fact, as Apple advertised it, it was a very, very user-friendly computer from the point of view of getting on the internet, which back in 98 had just started. It was 5-6 years old then. And I think some of the commercials Apple had at the time, in particular the Jeff Goldblum one of "There is no step 3." It was how to get on the internet with an iMac. It was plug it in, plug in the power, plug in the telephone cord, and that was it. You know, obviously there was more to it than that, but it made it seem like this stuff was really easy to do. And I remember being being tech support at the ISP where Your Mac Life or my podcasting career first started. I was a tech support at the ISP, and I was the Mac tech support. So any Mac questions came to me. And getting a Macintosh, even then on the internet, was dead simple. It was sometimes difficult for the customer, but once you walk them through the steps over the phone, it was easy to do. It was the exact same process for every single Macintosh. Whereas I'd listen to the PC tech support guys, and they'd be like, okay, unplug your printer. And I'm like, what? Why do I got to unplug the printer to get on the internet? You know, because the printer was conflicting with the modem. It was just really weird stuff. Oh, you have the Compaq Impresario. Okay, with the Hewlett-Packard printer, they're not going to work together. And I was like, why not? And it was because someone's driver was arguing something. It was just insanity. I'd sit there, I'd get maybe one phone call an hour. The PC tech guys were constantly on the phone, and there was backlogs of phone calls that they had to make. And while they were constantly putting out fires trying to get people on the internet, I was able to write documentation for the company that they could give to their customers and say, you got a Mac? Read this kind of stuff. Really, really simple and easy to do. And so Adam and I are doing this podcast thing because we had the extra time. And then in 98, when Apple announced in May this iMac thing, we knew that we were going to get a lot more Macintosh customers because this thing was going to be so easy to use. If the previous Macs were easy enough to get on the internet, this new one was going to be stupidly easy to get on the internet, especially for those people who either had used PCs and found them too difficult or hadn't used a computer at all. A lot of people, one of the biggest stinks about the iMac was Apple getting rid of all this stuff. They got rid of the keyboard, ADB keyboard connection. They got rid of serial ports. They got rid of SCSI. They got rid of all this stuff for this USB stuff that no one understood what USB was. But USB was easy. Just plug it in. What do you mean just plug it in? No, dude, just plug it in. But I got a mouse. Just plug it in. I got a printer. Just plug it in. There was nothing. You didn't worry about anything about it. You probably never dealt with SCSI, but you say the word SCSI to any old school tech support guy, and they just are twitching because SCSI was just this evil protocol that literally it mattered in what order you plug things in. The MacMan shutters. SCSI was such an evil protocol. It mattered in what order you plug things in. Like your scanner had to be the last thing on your daisy chain or your whatever it was. You're like, are you kidding me? Why? The old joke was that SCSI is a black art. You don't have to sacrifice a goat at midnight, but it helps. It was just the most awful thing in the world. And same with serial ports and all that other kind of stuff. And as Mac users, people forget that Intel actually invented USB and made it available to PC manufacturers, but nobody wanted to put it on their machine.
I do remember when that happened.
And so Apple built this machine that had no other ports except USB, and it encouraged other manufacturers, printer manufacturers were the first ones, scanner manufacturers were the second ones, to just build to this USB port, because then they could sell to both Mac and PC users. Even then, there were still driver issues. But for the most part, it was just ridiculously simple and easy to use. Just plug it in. But don't I have to? No, you don't. Just plug it in. I was on the phone all the time with people. I just bought a new mouse. What do I do? Just plug it in, dude. Do I need drivers? Probably not. Just plug it in and see what happens. The only bad thing about the original iMac was that awful, awful, awful mouse. That mouse was fucking evil. Oh. It was round.
Oh.
It was idiotically round. Mice are shaped to fit your hand for a reason. This one was round, so you were constantly grabbing it the wrong way and having to spin it around in one direction or the other. I watched the demo of the Apple event yesterday, and Steve Jobs raving about this mouse. And I don't know if the true story of that mouse will ever be told, but I would love to find out how that made it out of Apple's labs, because that was a universally reviled mouse. Everyone thought that was an awful mouse, except Ms. Duh. Remember Ms. Duh? She collected them. I don't know why. But the vast majority of people hated that mouse. And it actually, I'd be willing to bet, helped manufacturers, because the first thing people did was buy a new mouse. They went to Best Buy and Future Shop and bought a new frickin' USB mouse from Logitech or other companies, because that one that came with those Macs was just an awful machine. Send us your stories of your iMac. If you had one of the original Bondi Blue iMacs, or what you thought of the original iMacs, send us emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Later on the show, we're going to talk about the essential steps you need to take better photos. But up next, we're going to talk to a good friend, Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on this Wednesday evening. In our phone room, as always, we've got a good friend, Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Doing good, Shawn. How are you?
My condolences. Your Bruins are to the playoffs.
Yes. I did not like that very much at all. I must tell you. Well, I'm very upset.
I got to tell you, my condolences are definitely insincere.
I know that.
All right, good. As long as you weren't taking me seriously.
No.
May 6th, 20 years ago. Where were you? What were you doing?
I think I was in jail. No, not in jail. Maybe iMac launch.
You weren't at the iMac launch. You were still back home in Nova Scotia. You were working for Mac Central at the time, weren't you?
I was working for Mac Central.
The announcement wasn't attended by very many press people. It was at the time Steve Jobs announced weren't of the events that they were. They were pretty much just state of the company kind of things, basically saying, "Hey, we're still here. We haven't disappeared." Yeah. I watched that original announcement. It was very funny to see Steve Jobs brag on the fact that the company was worth $1 billion.
Yeah, that wouldn't last long, would it?
No kidding. So watching the original announcement and seeing Jobs bragging on the company that they were saying that their retention rate of employees was 15% and that they were giving stock options to employees and that kind of stuff. It really was him trying to convince people that the company was in good health. And there was a lot of doubt about that at the time, wasn't there?
Well, I mean, the most used word to describe Apple at that point was beleaguered.
Yeah.
That was it. Now we use doomed, but beleaguered was was the word of the day back then.
There was no article where that word wasn't used.
No, it was crazy. You know, it was crazy.
But
But
looking back on it from hindsight of 20 years, they really were in hard shape. I mean, even before Jobs came back, the company had bad CEOs, had an awful product line. I posted on the Loop today about the story of the failed game machine, the Pippin, that Apple was going to work with a company in Japan called Bondi. The, thank God, never came to fruition Apple Internet cafes that they were thinking about doing. I mean, they were throwing everything against the wall and hoping something stuck.
well, yeah, at that point they really were. But when Jobs came back, he really made an effort to say, stop all of this stuff, and let's get back to, what was it, 4 products on the grid. And this is all we're going to focus on.
People forget that at that point in time, before Jobs cleaned house, Apple was not only making computers, they were branding, I think it was Canon printers as Apple printers, the Apple LaserWriter printers. They had their own CD-ROM drives, 1-speed CD-ROM drives. They had one of those. They were making a whole bunch scanners, a whole bunch of peripherals that weren't selling very well, but that was distracting the company from all these different things. But conversely, when Apple canceled this stuff, including things like the Message Newton Pad, the Newton Message Pad, people thought that was a bad thing. That Jobs was gutting the company in order to get it ready. In order to get it ready to be sold.
People hate change.
Yes.
And Steve could see what needed to be done, and Steve did what Steve did. And I guess thank God he did that. But people just they react to things that they just hated. I mean, Apple has basically got rid of the iPod too, but nobody says anything about that.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I mean, he obviously made the right decision. We didn't realize until years later how close to bankruptcy they were. But he took every bit of money that they had and put it in the iMac.
But there was still a lot of concern because people remembered the old Steve Jobs and just assumed, and I think to a certain degree rightfully so, that tyrant was the guy who was coming back to be the iCEO. And a lot of pundits and a lot of people said, they couldn't wait for Jobs to get pushed aside by whoever the new CEO was going to be, because Apple was actively looking. They actually interviewed many people actively looking for a real CEO, because Jobs had publicly said anyway that he didn't want the job permanently.
Right. But I think it was when Steve did announce that he's taking the I off of, now at the time, for those that don't know, I meant interim CEO.
Yes.
So, he had that in his title, and then he took it off, so he was there full time.
Yep.
For the exorbitant amount of $1 a year. But him and the iMac changed the fortunes of Apple.
It's interesting. You equate the two, and it's kind of hard not to. But the rumor has been that the iMac was in the works before Jobs even came back. That was something Emilio was going to announce. That was Ive's first big project at Apple. Do you think the iMac would have been as successful without Jobs?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't think the iMac was the iMac.
Yeah.
That even if Emilio did manage in a stupor to come up with the iMac, even if that is true, it would not be the iMac that we know it.
Yeah.
It would be some beige thing that, was another all-in-one that Apple had. I mean, it's not like they didn't have all-in-ones.
Yeah.
And I doubt that Gil would have gotten rid of the serial ports and all of that kind of stuff. He would have kept all that, and he probably wouldn't have put USB in. But that's the stuff that Steve did. And I doubt that, a Bondi blue translucent color is something that Gil would have come up with on his own.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. The people in the IRC chat room are saying maybe, but it was Jobs who marketed it. It wasn't just Jobs who marketed it. It was something else people don't remember from that time. One of the first things Jobs did when he came back was fire their ad agency and rehire TWA Chiat Day, the guys who'd done the original marketing for the Macintosh. I think that helped a lot. That the marketing of the iMac, which obviously Jobs approved, the marketing really helped bring the iMac to the imagination of average people, of not nerds and techies, who the iMac was not designed or made for, but mom and pop and kids. The iMac made computing fun and friendly.
Well, and remember, one of the original iMac ads, and then getting connected to the internet was a huge thing.
Yep.
That was a big deal.
Yep.
And they said it's a 3-step process.
That's
one,
right.
Plug it in. 1, plug the modem in. And 3, oh wait, there is no
step 3. It's right.
That was pretty good. There's 2 steps to get this done.
And then
in actual fact, he was right.
Yep.
So good for them.
And then there was the other ad that really made an impression on me, was the one where they had the 7-year-old boy setting up an iMac out of the box and a 26-year-old grad student setting up, I think it was a Dell or a Compaq out of the box. And it took the kid like 7 minutes to do it, from cutting open the tape to getting on AOL. And it took the adult almost 30 minutes to do the exact same thing. And those kinds of things really, really helped. It wasn't just the design of the iMac, but it was the ease of use of the iMac and then the marketing of the iMac. The combination of all 3 of those things is what I think was really made it a huge hit.
Yeah, and it was a huge hit. There's and I hold today that iMac saved the company.
I agree.
It people who weren't around say it was the iPod or the iPhone. No, it was the iMac. I was there. I know.
I think one of the funny thing is in this the past year, when people have been complaining about Apple removing the headphone port on the iPhone 10. Y'all don't know shit about removing ports, man.
Yeah.
Apple took the iMac and gutted it. It had 7 ports, and they took away all of them.
Yeah. There was nothing.
There was nothing, man. There was 2 little USB ports. You're sitting there going, USB? How do I plug in my old keyboard? But the thing was, and people don't realize that today, as I said, the iMac wasn't designed for those folks who had those kinds of things. It was designed for the person who was getting their first computer, not for somebody moving from a Macintosh, a Performa at the time, into an iMac and bringing all the legacy equipment over with it, zip drives and scanners and SCSI devices and ADB keyboards. No, Apple was saying this is a clean slate. You're going to start all over again.
And it's funny to listen to people at the time, even when Apple popularized a USB because of the iMac. People were saying, well, Apple never invented USB.
Nope.
Well, no, they never said they invented USB, you moron.
Yep.
But who made it popular and what made it popular? The iMac and Apple.
Yep. I don't think Apple gets nearly enough credit for that alone. The fact that Intel had invented it 5 years before, had offered it to PC manufacturers to put on their motherboards and on their computers, and very, very few did, and therefore no manufacturers ever bothered to make very many printers or those kinds of things. A few of them did, but it wasn't until the Apple came along and the iMac came along that popularized USB and created a whole new market for these companies that allowed them to make products that would work consistently across the board. They no longer had to worry about it. I think that was the beginning of the whole plug and play. Plug and play didn't always work. I'll admit that, but it certainly increased plug and play ability on the PC side too.
Well, and what Jobs did that made it great after that, just for usability, was to include all of the drivers in the in the OS.
Yep.
So then it really was plug and play. You didn't need to. I mean, you still used to get a CD with drivers on it, but there was no need for that anymore. So that's the way it should be. And now we don't even think about it.
Yeah, now it's not even. It doesn't even come up as an issue. Peter Cohen wrote a really interesting story that we linked to on the Loop about that. The iMac really brought a sense of whimsy and fun to computing, and Apple doesn't seem to have that whimsy and fun anymore. Did you agree with Peter on that?
Well, I see what Peter's saying.
Yeah.
But it was easy at the time of beige boxes to come up with something a little bit different. I think that the AirPods are fun and magical. You just kind of take them out of their pouch and they're all of a sudden connected.
Yeah.
I like that. I really do. So I don't know. I know what he's saying, but I don't know that I mean, things could be getting a little boring compared to back in those days, but there was so much to change in those days.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted a better Mac computer, and nobody even knew what an iPod was at that point. So, they had all of that. They didn't know an iPhone, iPad, so many new products that, I think really changed the market.
Do you think that the iMac has lost its way? If it was the computer for, say, the beginner, for the average person, for your mom, does today's iMac still live up to that?
Well, see, again, we're in a different world. I mean, a MacBook is probably the starter computer now.
Yeah, yeah.
Or an iPad is the starter computer now. It's not the iMac. The iMac changed the way that people thought about computers the same way that MacBooks or iPads do now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, well, I don't see many new users buying an iMac. Well, no, but how many of those new users bought the 9 million iPads last month?
Yeah.
Or last quarter? How many of those people bought iMacs, to be sure, but MacBooks or MacBook Pros, or those are the computers that people are using now because people travel more. I mean, my grandmother has an iPad.
Yeah.
She's 90. She has an iPad, and she didn't want a phone. She didn't want a computer.
Yeah.
Her kids bought her a computer at one point. She didn't know how to use it. Gave her an iPad. Man, she's flying. She'll text me right back right now if I text her.
I think that's where Peter missed the point, was that, yes, the iMac may have moved on from that original sense of whimsy into a, if not utilitarian computer, certainly one that's lost that fun aspect of looking at it. But now it's the iPad. The iPad is the one where you can have the fun with, where you can have that portability, where you can have that ease of use that you had in the original iMac. So yes, I think the iMac has lost whimsy, but the Apple as a company hasn't. They've just passed it on to different products.
Yeah. And, like I said, right now, the whimsical or magical product that I see are the AirPods.
Yeah.
You flip them open in the case and it shows up on your screen of your phone. You pop them out and put them in your ear. Music just starts playing. I mean, God, that's pretty incredible.
I think the other aspect of it too is that we don't need our computers to be whimsical so much anymore when we're all connected to the internet all the time. The internet is where you'll find your whimsy now. Right now, my computer is just a window onto whimsy. Whoa.
I don't want to go there with you. No.
Why not?
I don't want to know where you find whimsy on the internet. Oh boy.
But
it's almost took a bad turn.
It's less about the device I'm using now, the one I'm doing on that device, is the point I guess I was trying to make.
You're absolutely right, because part of the big thing back then was actually getting on the internet.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, that was huge. And, you know, we're not there anymore. Obviously, you can get on the internet just by turning your phone on.
Yeah.
And you have, 100 times faster internet on your phone than what we used back then to on that original iMac. So that's just crazy.
Do you think the iMac will ever not be in the Apple's product line?
No, I don't think so. Certainly not for the foreseeable future, because it's just, it is one of those great machines, and it still works. I use a 27-inch iMac when I record the podcast, and I use a 15-inch MacBook when I am doing my daily work, and I mean, those computers, I think, are here to stay. And we talked about this a week or so ago about Tim saying that they're not going to make a touch-enabled Mac. Well, good, because they don't need it.
I still remember going to that first Macworld Expo in 1998 at the Javits Center in New York City, and seeing people. You couldn't. It wasn't available for sale just yet. You could pre-order it at the time, and people were flocking to the iMac display in the Javits Center. People were hugging the iMac. They were caressing the iMac. They were treating it already as a little friend, a little piece of the family. As underpowered as it was even then, even more so now, it is still the most fun computer I think Apple's ever made. Just, you immediately saw fun in the computer. I didn't like the Luxo lamp version of the iMac. I wasn't crazy about that form factor. I realized they had to change it. I didn't like the bulbous butt on that thing. And I love the iMacs of today. But that original one, that original Bondi blue one, and some of the ones that came after, not the Dalmatian, the flower power ones. No, those were awful. But that idea of it, if nothing else, I really like that. It's never coming back. Apple's never going to make a computer like this. No one's ever going to make a computer like that ever again. But it was, I think, the computer that made using a computer fun for a lot more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget now that the iMac was the first computer that you actually wanted on your desktop.
Yes, that's right.
You didn't want it hidden underneath your desk.
No.
You wanted people to see that. And they continued with that, with the Cube and with, a lot of the other computers. You could have even, although it was big, and I even had mine under my desk, you could have even had the G3 and the G4 and the G5 on your desk. They were still beautiful looking machines.
That's right.
So they started this design revolution in computers that, you want to show this thing off because it's beautiful.
And they kept doing that. That certainly is something that's a hallmark of the company from that moment to this, that for whatever reason, whether it be vanity or the cool factor, you liked showing off. You liked people seeing you with Apple products. I think that was part of the cult of Apple back in the day. Less so now, but even now, those devices are still aspirational. You'd like to be able to afford an iPhone 10. You'd like to be able to afford a MacBook Pro because you aspire to those devices. So Apple's kept that going through all these years as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on.
Except they put it through all of their devices.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the AirPods and the iPhone and the iMacs and everything now has that aspirational quality to it.
Yeah.
Let's move on and talk about the it's interesting to see how much play this is getting, this Google I.O. demo from yesterday.
Holy shit. That was amazing. Holy shit. That was just amazing. And I'll tell you something that I was hoping you were going to bring this up because I've been excited about this. There's one thing that hasn't been shown yet, or at least we didn't show it, where the guy actually had a conversation with the Google Assistant.
Yes.
And it was he only had to say, "Okay, Google," once.
Yep.
Not every stupid time you want to do something. Once. And then he had a conversation with the Google Assistant about, I don't know, something about getting his, wearing his Kevin Durant jersey or something.
Yeah.
And reminding him to take it out. And it was just crazy because that's one of the things that drives me nuts about Siri.
Yes.
Besides the fact that she can't understand me, I can't say, hey, Siri, do this and this.
Yeah.
But Google Assistant can.
Yeah, but that demo didn't bother you? See, I thought you'd be one of the few guys who would understand my point of view on this one, where I found that demo really, really creepy.
Okay, it may be creepy, but it worked, and it was great. And, you keep talking to me about Siri, and, what do you want out of Siri, and why doesn't Siri work? Watch that demo.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
That's why.
That's what we wanted of Siri.
That was unbelievable. No. Unbelievable. Now, I've seen people say, hey, it was a tech demo.
Yep.
Yeah, but they're coming out with that in the next few weeks.
I don't know about that. Who said that?
I think that's what he said on the video, that they're going to have a beta of that in the next few weeks, didn't he?
I don't know if he said that. A beta, maybe, yes.
Even if it's a few months, it's working. And
yes, it is working, and
it is amazing.
Yeah, it is working, and it is amazing.
You know what? I'm gonna have Google Assistant do this show for me from now on.
That's what I'm worried about. Every now and then it'll stop and light up a cigarette, and we'll hear a click, click.
I'm just gonna have Google Assistant. I'll still be in the bar. It'll be in the car. Doing the interview.
That's what scares me. But
look, I've seen some of the complaints about it, the ridicule about it, but as a working demo, holy shit, that was pretty amazing. I mean, you got to admit, it was amazing.
It was amazing, but is it necessary? Do we need it?
Well, no. I mean, I don't even know if my barber has a phone.
But so you don't find this weird and creepy?
In what way?
Well, I don't. Personally, I do not like talking to robots. I never use a voice tree system when I call up a company. If I call my bank up and they say push 1 for, no, I'm pushing 0 1,000 times to get to an operator.
I do the same thing.
Okay, so I don't.
You still could be talking to a robot. You just don't know.
And that's part of the problem. Is there an issue with us not knowing we're talking to robots? Should companies morally or ethically be forced to say, by the way, you're about to speak to a robot?
For what reason?
I don't know. That's where I'm worried about.
I want my problem solved. So when I call, if I can speak natural language and get pissed off or whatever, just speak natural language. I want the robot to tell me off. That's what I'm.
Hey, stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want my problem solved. And if an assistant, if my problem right now is scheduling lunch for 4 people at this restaurant at this time, and my assistant is now Google Assistant can do that for me, then what do I care? Yeah, great. And then it comes back and says, okay, your appointment is set for lunch at this restaurant.
Yeah.
I wanted to record all the calls though.
But isn't there a I think one of the problems that I had with the demo when I first watched it was the faking of being human. I think that's the part that bothers me the most is they insert the okay kind of things that
just,
give us cues that we're talking to a human being. I don't like the faking part.
Well, I mean, it's not. I didn't see it as faking, more as being real, trying to be real.
Yeah.
And when it said, when she said, "Okay, just hold on a sec." Okay.
Yeah.
It recognized what the person was saying, that she was looking for an appointment time. So if you were on the phone and somebody said, with your hair salon, which, whatever, and your stylist said, "Okay, just hold on a sec, Shawn, we're looking," you'd say, "Okay."
Yeah. I just want those interactions. I think we are fast coming to the day where this is going to be natural and normal for people. And I think that's going to take away some of our humanity as well. Tell
me why, though.
Because we are so busy trying to remove human beings from our lives. I think it's one of the reasons why we don't get along with each other so much, that we're trying to remove human interactions from everything we do. We're becoming lazier.
So,
this is becoming Wall-E. We're getting lazier and lazier and lazier.
So what would be the difference from the assistant making the call to you standing out in the park making the call when you could be talking to somebody else, or emailing them, or texting your salon, or whatever? What's the difference?
Because human interaction via voice is the most fundamental thing that we do as human beings.
But you're not sending the robot to get the haircut. You're actually going to get the haircut. You're going to get that human interaction.
You know what I wouldn't have a problem with? If my robot called your robot.
That would be fun.
I think that's the problem I have, is that my robot is calling a human being, and I think that diminishes the human being.
Well, I would automatically send your robot to my robot.
Exactly. That I would have no problem with. Or if the call started off with, "Hello, I'm the Google Assistant for Shawn King. Would you like to speak to me?" At least
then
let
I would say no. I would say no, because if you call me with, and I had somebody do that before. "Hi, I'm calling for, this person. Hold, please." No.
That's right.
And I hung up. No.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
They want to talk to me. They can call. I'm right here.
That's right.
You think I'm holding for a couple of minutes?
Yep.
Because no.
Yep. I agree.
Then he called right back.
Yep. I can't hang up on you fast enough, dude. If you pull that shit on me, no.
So I would do the same thing with a robot, but this was meaningful in the way that they were trying to get something done, and they did get something done.
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done. Now,
the next big aspect of this is everyone lost their shit over the fact, as you did, that Siri can't do this. That Siri is not going to be able to do this in the foreseeable future. That this is not something that people think Siri is ever going to be able to do. I don't agree with that, but is there a argument to be made that Apple should be worried about this?
Yes.
I'll
tell you this: Siri doesn't sound nearly as natural as what that voice did.
Yeah. Do you think that Apple needs to follow this path, or Apple is following this path, or will Apple find their own way to go about this kind of stuff?
If Apple is not following this path, then explain to me what Siri is as a virtual assistant. Because this, to me, as a technology demo, this to me was absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
I thought it was just incredible. So if that's not what Siri is, great. Okay. Tell me what it is then. Because it can't find the hockey games for me.
Yep, I agree.
So, and that's a pretty simple thing.
Well,
I asked Siri on, Monday? Yeah. Monday, I asked Siri, Tuesday, who's playing hockey tonight?
Yeah.
And it came up and said Nashville was playing Winnipeg on Thursday.
Yep.
Well, I didn't fucking ask you who's playing on Thursday.
That's right, exactly.
I asked you who's playing tonight. You could say intelligently, hey, Jim, there's no games on tonight,
Yep.
and there's also no games on Wednesday night. However, Nashville is playing Winnipeg on Thursday.
Yep.
No, I didn't ask you who was playing on Thursday. I asked you tonight. And Siri has missed the mark so many times. I don't know if she actually just skipped 2 days and decided to give me Thursday's schedule or what.
The Verge wrote an interesting sentence. Does technology that mimics humans erode our trust in what we see and hear?
Well, our trust should be eroded already if it's not.
Yeah, that's a true point. It's a sad point, but it's also true. I mean, but we're going down this road of there's less and less that we can see and hear and read that we can believe, and this is just adding to that shit pile of things that may not be true. What happens if the voice now can mimic your wife? What if the voice can mimic your kids? What if the voice can mimic your boss?
Look, I don't want to give too many spoilers here, but none of the Marvel movies are real. Not real. I'm just throwing that out there.
I know. I feel kind of get off my lawn-ish. I understand that.
And for all those people that are, dress up in Star Wars costumes, not real. Not real. No, none of it. Not even from the first movie. That wasn't real either. Not even from that one. Not real.
It's going to be interesting to see how or if Apple reacts to this at WWDC coming up in less than a month. Do you think they will?
Well, I think that everything that's set for WWDC is pretty much set. They're not going to be able to come out with a series that does this shit unless it's already been there.
I agree.
So, but this is what Google and some of these technology companies must feel like when Apple comes over with it's great new features,
sure.
And people just say, "Oh, God damn it!"
Yep.
Look, they did it again. They came out with these great features, and how are we going to match that? It's going to take us a year to match that.
Yep.
Well, that must be how, or Apple doesn't care. And if they don't care, then again, all I want to know is what is Siri?
Yeah.
Because she can't schedule shit for me on the calendar. She can't do much. So, what is it?
If and when this comes out as a real piece of technology, as right now it's just a demo, and Google is notorious for showing stuff off at the Google I/O conference that never sees the light of day, and this could very well be one of those things. This could have all been faked very easily. But let's give Google the benefit of the doubt and say a year from now this will be available on Android phones. If that's in fact the case, Google has leapfrogged Siri and Apple by orders of magnitude in their ability to take their virtual assistant and make it become an actual real live assistant as opposed to a trivia answering machine.
Right. So the question is, does the public really care? That I'm not so sure about.
No.
I don't know that the public cares that this can do this for them, that Google could do that for them. And that's where Apple could have its saving grace.
No.
That people just say, I don't understand what you're talking about, virtual assistant, or I don't care about a virtual assistant. I'll call my hairstylist myself.
Yeah. And there's a certain percentage of the population it's not going to matter. I mean, for me, it's unlikely, no matter how cool Google Assistant is, does that mean I'm going to give up my iPhone and buy an Android phone just to use Google Assistant? No, I'm not. No. There's no chance in the world it's ever going to happen. I'll just bitch about the fact that Siri can't do it.
Right. Yeah, so what?
Yeah.
But again, if Apple's not going to do it, tell me what Siri is.
Yep, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. Folks, head on over to loopinsight.com. Jim's got his own podcast called the Dalrymple Report that he has posted up there yesterday. He had, once again, 4 weeks in a row, you talked to Dave Mark. Have you noticed that? 4 weeks in a row.
Dave has a lot to say.
Yeah, but there's other people out there, I'm just saying.
Okay. All right. I'll let Dave know you don't want to listen to him anymore.
The Dalrymple Report's available on the Dalrymple Report.
Hey, Dave, we're getting complaints about you being on the show. Oh, really? From web? No, not from the web. Twitter? No, not from Twitter. Only when I go on Shawn's show.
Tell Dave to get his own goddamn show. It's not hard. Jesus.
Right.
I mean, if you and I can do it, anybody can do it. Come on, man.
There you go.
Dalrymple Report's available on the iTunes store. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it's true. He only gets complaints from me. Everyone else doesn't mind hearing Dave. All right, fine. Be that way. See if I care. When we come back in our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about the essential steps you need to take in order to create better images. If you remember just these simple few things, I guarantee you your shots will get better. All that and much more coming up. This is your Mac Life.
Hello, my name is Melissa King. I'm Your Mac Life's official spokes Australian. As Shawn begins his 25th year of broadcasting on the internet, he has asked me to say a few words to you all. Send money. What? Why not? More? Okay. When you listen to Your Mac Life, you'll notice there are no ads, no commercial breaks, no 5-minute ad reads for products you've already bought or have no interest in buying. That's because Your Mac Life is entirely listener-supported, and not even listener-supported via a paywall or a subscription service. It's simple. If you like Your Mac Life, you can pay for it. If you don't want to pay for it, you don't have to. You can still listen. But we'd really like it if you did. On the Your Mac Life homepage at yourmaclifeshow.com, on the top left, there is a subscribe to YML box. You can send any amount you'd like each month automatically from your credit card or PayPal account. It's set for $2, $5, $10 or $15, but you can set it for any amount by clicking the Donate button. The best part is you'll barely notice it. It's $2, but it makes a huge difference to us here at Your Mac Life. It means we can pay for website hosting, internet access, new computers and software to run the show on, and so much more. So, if you like Your Mac Life, please subscribe. $2 will make a tiny dent in your wallet, but when enough people subscribe, it makes a huge difference to Your Mac Life. I'm Melissa King. Thank you.
Welcome back to the show, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I am Shawn King. This is our starting point photography segment of the show. One of the things that I'm always banging on people about is that, I've said many, many times, it's not the gear, it's not the lens, it's not the camera, it's nothing along those lines. A lot of it is knowing how to take good photos. And as beginners, a lot of beginners just don't know how to do that. they think that a better lens or a better camera or a prettier sunset, all those things will automatically create better images for them. And you can create some good images by accident. If you take enough photos, Stevie Wonder can take, if he takes 1,000 photos, he'll get 1 or 2 good shots. But your goal is to consistently take good pictures. Hopefully that's your goal. Is more often than not, when you point your camera at a scene and push the shutter button, you're creating a good image, or at least an image that gets you on the way to being a good image. So these are the kind of things that I try to teach beginners. It doesn't matter what camera you've got with these ideas. It doesn't matter whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone or a point and shoot or DSLR. It doesn't matter. The first thing you've got to do is see the image, see the scene. I try to get my students to pre-visualize what they're going to shoot. So in your mind's eye, you should be able to see the end result of the image. If it's a flower, imagine what the flower is going to look like on your screen. If it's someone's face, imagine the kind of smile you're looking for. If it's a race car going by a track, imagine what that's going to look like. See that. See the light. In every one of those situations I just spoke of, if the light's not right, the image isn't going to come out. There's no point in taking a image of someone's face if they're looking into the sun and squinting. Or if the sun is directly overhead and there's these big old shadows coming down over their face and their nose looks like a big hook because of the shadows. You're not seeing the light. You're not seeing the image that is in front of you. But that takes practice. It really does. It really takes a lot of going out there and focusing on being a photographer, looking at a lot of photographs, yours and other people's, to see the image before it actually happens. But I guarantee you, if you start thinking about the image before you take the picture, your images will get better. The other aspect of that goes along with it is to try to take pictures that have a reason for being, not just because it's there, but a picture that creates an emotion, whether that's a good, most pictures are taken to create good emotions. It's a pretty picture. You want people to be happy. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But look for that emotion. Where is that emotion? The wonder of the image, the beauty of the image, the sadness of the image. I still remember one of the saddest pictures I ever saw was somebody posted and I had mentioned it to them, and they showed me the image afterwards. I have a not a morbid, but a fascination and an enjoyment, and I know that's a weird way of describing it, of cemeteries. I like going into cemeteries. I like reading headstones. I don't know why, but there's never been any sort of creepy feel for me about this. It's just imagining the people, imagining there's a very famous cemetery in my hometown of Halifax, and Halifax has the only Crimean War memorial in North America. That's really kind of odd. The Halifax Cemetery has headstones from the 1700s. So it's a really, really old cemetery. And I love going through it and trying to read some of the names. I've never been a rubbing person. You ever done that? You ever gone to cemeteries and done rubbings?
Oh, no.
I've never done that.
I like cemeteries, but I haven't done that.
So I don't know if it's the peaceful, but anyway. So I told this person about this, and they showed me a picture, and they'd taken a picture of at ground level headstone or grave marker, and it had the name and the birth date and the death date, and it was right next to those things was 2 bronzed baby shoes. And you then look at the date and you realize that's a baby in there, and it was just a devastating image. It was an image that immediately made tears come to my eyes. That's a good image. If you can convey that emotion, good, bad, or otherwise, if you can convey emotion in your images, if you can make someone feel something about your image, that's a good image. So think about that. Think about a feeling somebody would get when you would show them the image. MacMan points out you have to, no pun intended, work on developing your eye before you can really start taking good pictures. That's absolutely true, MacMan. And then you got to think about the photo. You have to think about, do I have the right gear? This is where knowledge comes into play. You don't have to know this stuff, but the more knowledge you have, the better your images are going to be. So, for example, I'll be walking around with a, say, a 24-70 lens on. And because I know that's the kind of lens I've got on my camera, I know what kind of images I'm going to get from that camera. So when I see something, I think about the image, I know where I can capture it with that lens. So if I see an eagle in the sky, I'm not even going to point my camera at that eagle. I know I'm not going to get the shot. I think about it. I look at the eagle, I look at the light and go, I'm not getting that shot. Don't bother. People see pictures, you see people taking pictures of the moon all the time. And not only are they boring pictures, because the moon doesn't come out very well in photographs with your iPhone or with your regular camera, it's because they're not thinking about the shot. They're not thinking and realizing, I can't get that shot. If I take a picture of Melissa, her and I, we took this shot on Monday when we got our new glasses. I said, let's take a picture, and you said a great thing. So, well, watch out for the background. I was like, oh, isn't she cute? But what I did was I thought about how I wanted this image to come out. Before I lifted the camera, I had a visual in my mind's eye of how I wanted this image. And knowing how to use the camera, thinking about the shot, thinking about the light, I knew I had to do this to get the image I wanted. So I saw the image before I took the picture. I saw the light and realized we need to go stand over here to get this good lighting thing. I wanted an image that showed our height difference, because that's kind of cute to me. You could have been standing on the step up, and we could have been the same height, but I didn't want that image. So you're thinking about the image. You're thinking about what's going into the image, how to create the image, and do I have the right gear to create the image that's in my mind's eye? One of the other things I see beginners doing all the time, and it's one of the simplest things you can do to create better images, is when you see that thing that you want to take a picture of, get closer to it. And then get closer again. And get closer again. Get as physically close to the image as you possibly can. As beginners, you want to focus on filling the frame with that thing, with that flower, with that person's face, with that cat, whatever it is. Get as much of it into the frame as you can, because what that does is it gets rid of distracting backgrounds. It gets rid of telephone poles coming through heads. It gets rid of all that stuff that isn't important to your image. A perfect example of it is with flower photography. I see this all the time. Someone will take a pretty picture of a flower, but because they're standing 5 feet away from the flower, the flower they're looking at is kind of fades into the background of the background. So it's not as important as you think it is. You got to remember that your eyes see things differently than your camera does. You have to learn how your camera sees, not how to reproduce that with you, reproduce what your eye sees in the camera. So just get closer, Monty. Zoom with your feet. Get physically closer to whatever it is you want to shoot, whether it's a person's face, whether it is an animal at a zoo, whether it's a flower, whatever it is. You've got to get closer. It helps to isolate your image from the background. One of the other things I like to do too is, I did this with a picture I took of Melissa a couple days ago. You were outside working. It was on Monday. Melissa's outside on our deck working. The light was just really, really, really beautiful. I took my camera, my iPhone, and I snuck up on her. And the first thing I did was I took a quick picture because you didn't see me. And I literally was hiding around the corner and stuck the camera out and took the picture. Because I didn't want you to see me. Because the light and your pose, you were working, you had what are the flowers on the deck? Lilacs?
No, they're not lilacs.
Where are they?
No, I'm not sure what they're called.
They're pretty purple flowers in a vase that you had there with your Mac and your beautiful red hair. That was a really pretty picture. But I didn't want to disturb you. I didn't want you to look up and pose for me, which is what you do.
I do not.
I'm teasing. No, you don't. So what I wanted to do was get a picture of you where you did not
Go
know
away.
I was around. What? So what I did was get around the corner, take the picture, and then try to get another picture. Move into the frame, into her space. And when I got there, I took another picture. And then I got a little bit closer and I waited for her to look at me. And I was ready to take the picture when she looked at me. And I probably was waiting there for 30 seconds or 45 seconds, just with my thumb poised over the shutter button, waiting for her to look at me. And as soon as she looked at me, I hit the shutter button. So I took 3 or 4 shots leading into the eventual shot I got, because I wanted to make sure I got at least something out of it. If I had just walked into the space and Melissa looked up at me, it wouldn't have been a natural shot. At least it wouldn't have been the shot that I was imagining in my head that I wanted to have happen more organically, because that's the image that I wanted to get. The other thing is experiment. Play around with it. There are hundreds of different apps out there for your iPhone. There are hundreds of different settings on your camera, your DSLR. Learn what this stuff does. If you have a DSLR that's got scene mode, go out and read your manual, find out what scene modes it has, then go and shoot those scene modes. So if your camera has a landscape mode on it, go out and shoot landscapes. Go stand in the forest and take pictures of the forest. Go stand by the water's edge and take pictures of the water's edge. If your camera has a portrait mode, go shoot portraits. Experiment with portrait mode. With the iPhone, if you've got one of the newer iPhones and you've got the portrait lighting mode, experiment with the portrait lighting mode. Play around with the different things your camera can do. If you've got one of the fancier apps like Halid on the iPhone, it allows you to manipulate the shutter speed. Play around with the shutter speed. Experiment with different things that you can do with the camera so that when you get into a situation where you visualize an image that might not be this normal everyday image, you'll know how to do that on your camera. A perfect example is, I've used this example before, of we go to the Hastings racetrack here in Vancouver, the horse racing track, once a year to take pictures. And I love that the visual image in my head of the horses running in front of us. So the jockey's head and the horse's head are in perfect focus, but the horse's legs are in a blur, showing that motion. Well, if you try to take that picture with just your iPhone or with your DSLR set to automatic mode, you're not going to get that image. Everything will be in focus. You won't get any of that blur. So what you need to do is have practiced ahead of time to know how to set your camera up in order to create the image that you imagine. It's like going to waterfalls and taking pictures of waterfalls. If you just walk up with your iPhone or your camera on automatic mode and take a picture of the waterfall, you're not getting the image that you think you're going to get. You've got to know how to manipulate your camera settings and experiment with different kind of settings before you'll ever be able to actually take those images. As always, if you have any questions about this kind of stuff, please let me know. Send me emails to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. What's MacNet pictures? People are posting pictures in the IRC chat room.
Flowers, tulip,
flowers,
and the sunflower is especially beautiful.
I'm just looking up at the sunflower. That's a great shot.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Let me see if I can't get this up for the audience to see it. This is MacMan took this shot.
Mm-hmm.
I love the blurry background, MacMan. I love the blur you've got in behind this, and I wonder does he have settings that Nikon D50? It's my old camera. There's no EXIF data. So there it is. So this is there was no camera ID for this one, but I can guarantee that's going to be at a aperture setting that's quite a small number, because that's why you get that really pretty blurry background. So yeah, that's a very nice shot. And same with the tulip shot. Is that also MacMan?
Mm-hmm.
MacMan also got another shot of tulips, or tulip. But that's an example of isolating the image, just the one flower. So look for those kinds of things when you go to shoot. it helps you focus on the image. It helps to isolate the image by focusing on one thing and practice shooting one thing. You can eventually shoot more than one thing, obviously. You can experiment with shooting more than one thing, but get at least one shot. If you're shooting a bunch of flowers, get at least one shot. Isolate just one flower with a nice blurry background and see if you can't accomplish what you're looking for there. That's it, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining us. This has been your Mac Life. I want to say thanks to our friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining me here on the show. Send us your emails about your experience with the original iMac. Did you get one of the Bondi Blue iMacs? Do you still have one of the Bondi Blue iMacs? We actually went by when we were in Australia and we were doing our sightseeing in Sydney, and the sightseeing tour bus took us through the Bondi Beach area. And you said it's not even one of the best beaches in Sydney.
No, it's the most well-known, but to me, it's certainly not the most beautiful beach.
Is it a touristy beach, or is it just a...
For some reason, it's just a famous beach. It's a beautiful inner-city beach. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's not my favorite beach.
In Sydney?
Yeah, no, I didn't used to go to Bondi Beach.
Does Sydney have a bunch of beaches?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, I'm used to harbors that don't have any beaches at all because of the shipping. But Sydney Harbor is huge. It's the largest natural harbor in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, the deepest.
Deepest.
Too.
Yeah.
There's lots of beautiful little isolated, gorgeous beaches all around Sydney Harbor. Bondi Beach is a big, crowded city beach.
Sydney Harbor isn't a simple in and out harbor. There's all kinds of nooks and crannies. If you ever look at it on Google Maps, you'll see what I mean. Halifax Harbor is shaped like a spoon. It's got a narrow bit and then it opens up wide, but that's it. There's no tributaries off of it. But I saw the pictures of Sydney Harbor, and there's all kinds of nooks and crannies all over Sydney Harbor that make it suitable for swimming.
And
Cool. So Shawn at YourMacLifeShow.com. Let me know what you guys think about the original iMac, whether you had one or whether you have an iMac now. As always, thanks to you guys for being tuned in the show. Appreciate the listenership of the show. And also, thanks very much to... she's not feeling very well. So we're going to have to go a little early. So until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
And you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!
Bye.